I'm 67 years old. All my life I worked hard so my children could have more than I ever did. But instead of gratitude, what I received was humiliation. The kitchen light flickered when I turned it on. That dull yellow glow was too cold to feel warm and too weak to feel alive. The ceiling bulb buzzed softly as if it were also tired of pretending it belonged there. The tiles were clean, but not because of them. I scrubbed them on my knees with my hands on the floor last Sunday while the rest of the house slept. My joints screamed in pain, but I stayed quiet. It was already past 7 in the evening and the sun had fallen behind the horizon. Through the window above the sink, I heard Michael say, "Mom, you are still living under my roof. It is only fair." That word again, fair. He said it so naturally, like he was talking about splitting the check at a diner, as if I had not raised him with every ounce of strength I had left after his father died, as if I had not slept on the sofa for 3 years, just so Sarah and he could each have their own room. Sarah was my youngest daughter. She was an adult now, but still lived with us on and off, as if I had not sacrificed weekends and dates and birthdays and my own comfort just so they never felt the weight of what we lacked. Now the weight was me, an expense, a monthly number, $1,200. It started by calling it helping with expenses, but soon it became a phrase he repeated at least once a week. Under my roof. The emphasis always felt calculated, as if he needed to remind me where I was, or rather, where I no longer was. And then there was Sarah, who came and went. But when she was here, she lived as if the house were hers. The same roof, the same food, but no rent, not a single dollar. Her laughter always filled the hallway with the light on, sharp and polished. She was the type of woman who always wore matching activewear even though she never sweated. Her perfume stayed floating in the air long after she left a room, citrusy and something expensive whose name I did not know. Her SUV took up half the garage, and she still rolled her eyes if I parked too close. And yet she was seen as the guest, the spoiled one. I was the one paying. Every first Friday of the month, Michael extended his hand over the kitchen island as if he were receiving a delivery. Linda would look up from her phone and give me a tight smile, a smile of approval, as if I were finally behaving myself, as if I had earned a spot at the table at least for 30 days. I never argued. I never asked why Sarah contributed nothing. I just nodded and handed him the check. My fingers always trembled a little when giving it to him, but I took a deep breath and controlled them. I told myself it was dignity. I told myself it was temporary. But deep down, I knew that was the price of not being alone. Some nights, I heard them talking. I did not try to listen, but the walls of that house had their own way of whispering. One night, Sarah's voice floated down the hallway. "Well, basically, she is your maid. She should pay." Linda laughed, light and cruel. I waited for Michael to say something, anything. But the only thing I heard was the sound of the TV volume going up. That night, I lay in bed watching the ceiling fan blades spin too slowly, as if mocking my patience. My heart ached with something heavier than sadness. It was something colder, familiar but now sharper. It reminded me of the winters after my husband died, how I sat by the heater in our small apartment wrapped in 2 sweaters watching my children sleep, knowing I could not pay to fix the roof leak or replace the old water heater. Back then, my love for them was armor. It protected me from the cold outside and the fear inside. I thought that love would accompany me in my old age like a kind of insurance. But there I was, paying rent to my own son. Christmas Eve dinner was the breaking point. I woke up early that morning before the rest of the house. The sky was still covered in a silver-gray mist. I rubbed my eyes, put on my soft-soled shoes, and walked silently to the kitchen. I made the turkey exactly how Michael liked it before, stuffed with apples and rosemary. I prepared green bean casserole and an apple salad. I arranged the dish in the ceramic serving bowl Michael gave me years ago, the one he had surely already forgotten. I baked 2 pies, 1 apple and 1 pumpkin. By mid-afternoon, the aromas filled the house. Warm cinnamon, roasted garlic, buttered bread. I thought maybe this would be the moment they would see me again, not as the tenant, not as the maid, but as their mother. The one who built their childhood with stretched meals and hand-me-down clothes, washed until they were soft as clouds. Instead, while I was drying my hands with a rag, Linda walked in and said, without looking at me, "We invited some friends. Could you eat earlier in your room? It is going to be a little crowded." Crowded? That word? As if I were a piece of furniture, an obstacle that did not match the decoration. Michael was behind her holding disposable plates. He did not even look me in the eyes. Later, he brought a plate to my room, a plastic fork, no napkin, and he said, "We will clean up later, do not worry." He closed the door without waiting for an answer. I stared at the food until it went cold. That night, I cleaned the kitchen alone. Late after everyone had gone to sleep, the wine glasses in the sink still smelled of red berries and wood. Laughter echoed faintly in my ears. Not from that night, but from memory. From those Christmas Eves when we were 5 around a table squeezed into a small apartment, laughing over dry turkey and burnt bread, but laughing together. Now the only thing left of those years was me. Still cooking, still cleaning, still giving, and now paying. When I turned to go back to my room, I noticed a plain white envelope on the counter. It said Mom. Inside was a carefully printed list of utilities and shared groceries. The total, $1,214.68. No note, no happy face, just numbers. Like a record, like a receipt for my place in their lives. I went back to my room, closed the door slowly, and sat on the edge of the bed. My knees ached. My back throbbed, but the deepest pain was silent. It was not sharp like a cut, but dull and constant, like a bruise one keeps pressing just to feel something. I did not sleep that night. I watched the sky turn from black to blue through the blinds and listened to the sounds of a house I no longer belonged to. At some point in those silent hours, something shifted. It was not a sudden break, but a slow rupture. The kind that makes no noise but leaves a crack big enough for the truth to get in. I did not notice it immediately. It started with small things, like the way Michael said my name. It was no longer Mom or Ma, but she, when he talked about me with Linda. Can you see if she finished with the laundry or if she left the kettle on again? At first, it was subtle, but the more I heard it, the more it sounded like I did not belong there. As if I were something that had to be managed. That hurt more than I wanted to admit. It felt like a tiny prick that returned over and over. Like the stab of a splinter no one sees, but I felt every second. And I did feel it. In the back of my throat when I tried to respond with a smile. In the center of my chest when I lay awake at night, wondering if I was the problem. Every word he said had a new tone. Drier. Sharper. There was no longer kindness in his eyes nor patience. It was as if I had become a stranger inside my own son's world. Once I asked him if he wanted me to make his favorite soup, the one I made him when he had the flu as a boy, and he answered, "No thanks. We do not eat that kind of stuff anymore." It was not what he said, it was how he said it. Fast, cold, as if he was ashamed that I still believed I had something to offer. My hands trembled a little while I rinsed the pot I had planned to use. I stood in front of the sink watching the water swirl and go down the drain, and I remembered the nights he begged for that soup, curled up on the couch, trusting that I could fix everything. Linda was no better. She never said anything openly cruel. No, she was too polished for that, but she made sure I heard the little things. I just like a cleaner smell on the clothes. She said once, after re-washing the laundry I had already folded. That same day, she took out another detergent container and wrote her name on it with a black marker. I like fluffier towels. Do not be offended, she added again with a smile that did not reach her eyes. She did not need to say anything else. It was all in the way she moved around me, correcting, adjusting, replacing. She would refold things I had already put away. She rearranged the dinners I had cleaned up, and never once did she say thank you. I started folding the towels twice just to leave them how she liked. I stopped using the lavender-scented softener I had always loved. I stopped offering help in the kitchen because even the way I chopped vegetables seemed to annoy her. But nothing changed. I was still treated like a shadow, something uncomfortable, something they could not throw away but could not stand to look at either. Every time Michael reminded me about the rent, it felt like a slap. Not a hard one, but one that always landed in the same spot. "Hey, Ma, just to remind you, the month is almost over. Is the check ready?" He said it out loud, always in front of Linda, always in the kitchen, as if to ensure I remembered the balance of power, as if to show her that he ruled the house. I nodded, handed it to him in silence, and went back to my room without saying a word. But inside, I was burning. It was not just the money, it was the way he made me feel small for needing a place to live, as if I had not given him a roof for decades, as if I had not skipped meals sometimes so he could eat better. That check was more than money. It was a reminder of how far I had fallen in his eyes. Once Sarah laughed when she saw me scrubbing the floor. "Ma, you really do not have to play Cinderella. We have a vacuum, you know." Michael laughed too. Not because it was funny, but because he could. Because no one in that room thought I deserved dignity. I did not answer. I kept scrubbing. Because if I stood up and looked at them, maybe I would say something I would regret. Or worse, I would cry. And I was not going to give them that. The floor was warm under my knees, but my hands were cold-soaked by the bucket of soapy water. I focused on every tile as if it were a shield, something I could polish until I forgot. Then came the little rules they made without ever saying they were rules. Linda started labeling the pantry. Her name on the oat milk. Sarah's on the hummus. One day I made myself toast and used a little of Linda's strawberry jam. Just a spoonful. Later I found a new note on the refrigerator. "Please respect the labels. Everyone buys their own." I stared at that paper for a long time, my hand still holding the refrigerator door, the cold air brushing my skin. It felt like they were telling me I did not belong there. Not even at breakfast did I touch the jam again. The afternoons were the worst. Before I used to sit with them in the living room, watch TV, make light conversation. Then little by little, they started watching shows I did not understand. Shows they knew I would not like. Loud and flashy things full of inside jokes. They laughed at jokes I did not get. And when I asked, Sarah would say, "It is okay, Ma. It is not your type of show." Over time, I stopped going in there. I stopped trying. I spent more time in my room. That small space became my world, my bed, my little window, my books. It smelled of lavender oil and old paper. The light was soft thanks to the yellow lamp I brought from my old house. The walls were bare except for a calendar I stopped updating months ago. It was the only place in the house where I did not feel like a burden. Michael sometimes knocked on the door, but never to talk, always for something. "Do you know where the duct tape is? Can you watch the kids on Saturday? Linda and I have dinner plans." Never to ask how I was, never to say thank you. Once when the twins spilled juice on the carpet, Linda looked straight at me and said, "Next time you give them juice, do it in the kitchen." I had not even been in the room. She did not care. I swallowed hard and said nothing. That was the worst of all. The silence. Not mine. Theirs. They never apologized. They never explained anything. They never said why they treated me like this. But every word, every sigh, every look carried a message. You are here because we allow it. Be grateful. Do not get in the way. I started waking up earlier, at 5 in the morning, before everyone else. I made my coffee in silence. I sat alone at the table and looked out the window at the empty street. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound constant and indifferent. Outside, the world was still normal. The wind still moved the trees. The sky still changed colors every morning. Soft pinks, then gold, then blue. That reminded me there was a world beyond those walls, that maybe I was not invisible everywhere, only here. Sometimes I heard a bird sing, and tears rose without warning, because I remembered who I had been before. Someone people smiled at, someone who hosted birthday parties, ironed shirts and received thanks, someone who mattered. Now I was just someone who paid rent. I tried not to keep score, but every little cut stayed with me. The gesture when I asked a question, Linda's look when I opened a package that was not mine, the way Michael raised his voice when I used the wrong remote by mistake, even Sarah's jokes. "You are not on Facebook, right, Ma? It is too complicated." Every single thing was ripping away a little piece of me. I felt like I was getting smaller, disappearing into silence. And yet I smiled when the kids ran to hug me. Their little arms around my neck were the only moments I felt human. Even so, I washed dishes no one asked me to wash. Even so, I gave them money they had never earned. I wanted to believe it was love, but it was no longer love. It was habit. It was fear. Fear of what would happen if I stopped doing it. Fear of not knowing where to go. Fear that maybe they were right. But deep inside me, something was starting to wake up. A part that remembered my worth. Not with noise, not with anger, but with a silent and growing certainty that I did not deserve this. And maybe I did not have to stay. It did not happen all at once. There was no explosion or final argument. There was only a moment, quiet, almost motionless, in which something inside me stopped accepting. It was a Tuesday, cloudy. The sky outside was a dull gray, lifeless like wet ash. Through the windows came a weak light, pale and cold, casting soft shadows on the floor. The house smelled slightly of reheated leftovers and fabric softener, a smell that stuck, that got into the clothes. Not unpleasant, just dull. I was folding laundry in the kitchen. The towels were warm, fresh from the dryer, but my hands felt cold. I was halfway through a pile when Michael walked in. His voice broke the stillness. "Yeah, she is still here. What do you want me to do? She has nowhere to go." He was talking on the phone, but those words hit me like a slap. He did not whisper. He did not even lower his voice. He said it as if I were not a few feet away, as if I were a piece of furniture he was already tired of. My hands froze mid-fold. The towel suddenly weighed like lead. My knuckles tensed and my chest tightened in that silent way the heart sinks. Pride does not let you react. I kept folding, but something inside me shut off. That night, I went to bed with the light off. My body ached in that familiar way. The dull pull in my knees from bending down to clean the baseboards, the prick in my back from scrubbing the lower cabinets. No one had asked me to. I just did not want to hear Linda sigh and redo it later. The room was in shadow, barely lit by the glow of the streetlight slipping through the blinds. I watched the shadows move on the ceiling as the fan spun slowly above me. I did not cry. I did not even blink for a long time. I just remembered. This was not new. I thought of my father, how he stood on the porch when I was 17 holding a small envelope in his rough hands. "You have to leave," he told me, nothing else. No explanation, no warmth, just those words. Inside the envelope was $1,000 and a paper with a stranger's address. I left and built a life. But that same voice echoed now decades later in my own son. She has nowhere to go. I had spent my entire adult life trying to make sure my children never felt unwanted, that they always had a bed to sleep in, a hot meal, a place to return to. And there I was, being mentioned as if I were a stain on the carpet. That was when something in me changed. Not with rage, not with tears, with clarity. The kind that arrives after being tired for too long, the kind that sits beside you and tells you enough. The next morning I got up before dawn. Outside it was still dark, but a soft indigo could be seen climbing over the roofs. The birds had not started singing yet. The house was silent. I put on my robe. I walked slowly to the kitchen and made coffee. The aroma filled the space warm and steady like a memory held in steam. I drank it slowly, watching the light spread across the floor. And I decided. I had savings, quiet money, saved over the years, birthday cards I never spent, little odd jobs, a tax refund I never talked about. I always told myself it was for just in case. The case had arrived. Later that day, while Linda took the twins to a play date and Michael was upstairs glued to his computer, I made my calls. I spoke in a low voice. I took notes in a corner of my planner. I kept my voice calm. 2 days later, I walked into a small villa by the coast. It was cream-colored, that pale yellowish white that glows softly in the sun. The shutters were faded blue. The porch was framed by overgrown rosemary and wildflowers. I breathed the salty air with a touch of lemon and damp earth. The woman who showed me the house was kind. She told me the last owner had been a widow who spent mornings reading in the backyard surrounded by roses she had planted herself. Inside the house was silent, no TV hum, no footsteps above my head, just the sound of the breeze slipping through the half-open kitchen window. My shoes made a soft tapping on the tile floor. I let my fingers graze the edge of the counter, cool, smooth stone without stains, without crumbs. I walked from room to room. I did not say much. I just listened to my breathing, the stillness. I bought it. I paid in full and told no one. During the next week, I packed slowly in silence, a few boxes at a time. I did not want much, just the essentials. My photo albums, a box of letters, my mother's quilt, the yellow lamp, and the mug Michael made in second grade. A chipped and uneven thing. I held it longer than I thought I would. Michael did not notice I was packing, or if he did, he said nothing. Linda barely looked at me that week. Sarah had not come over in more than 10 days. The house felt colder even though the weather outside had warmed. And then came the morning I left. It was raining. It was not a storm, just a soft, constant drizzle, the kind that darkens the sidewalk and makes everything smell like wet leaves and earth. I put on my coat and held the umbrella firmly in one hand. The suitcase was by the door, a single check, my last rent, resting on the counter. Michael walked in, rubbing his eyes. His voice sounded sleepy. "Are you going somewhere?" I looked at him. "Really?" "Looked at him?" "Yes." He blinked, frowning. "You did not say anything. I do not need permission." Linda came down the stairs in a robe with a towel wrapped around her hair. Her eyes went from my suitcase to my face. "Is everything okay? I am moving out." She stopped, confused. "Just like that?" I nodded. "Just like that." I took the check and placed it carefully on the counter. "This is the last one. You will not have to remind me again." They said nothing. Michael opened his mouth and closed it. Linda shifted her weight from one foot to the other but kept silent. I opened the front door. The outside air was cool, clean, full of that clear scent only rain brings. Stepping out, I felt lighter. The drive to the villa was like waking up. The windshield wipers pushed the rain aside with a gentle rhythm. Outside, the world passed by. Grocery stores, people with umbrellas, children jumping in puddles, life-color movement. At the villa, I unlocked the door. The key turned without effort. I went in. The light was soft, filtering through sheer curtains. I opened the windows. A breeze with sea air and silence came in. I walked barefoot on the clean floor. My steps did not echo. They belonged. I made tea. I used my mug. I sat at my table. A bird sang loudly outside, perching on the windowsill. I smiled. Then I laughed. A soft surprise sound that rose from deep within. I had been quiet so long I had forgotten what my voice sounded like. I could have fought. I could have screamed, demanded to be seen, pointed out every lack of respect. But I chose something harder. I chose to leave with dignity. Not because they deserved my silence, but because I finally knew I did not owe them my pain. Now I sit by the window every morning. I drink my tea. I breathe. And I remember who I am. I did not run away. I walked forward, and I am not lost. I am home. It all started 2 days after I left. The sun rose soft that morning, peeking through a thin curtain of clouds. The light spilled onto the wooden floor of my new living room, warming the still air. The smell of fresh coffee came in through the open window, carried by a sea breeze that seemed to arrive just when the silence became too deep. In the distance, the waves could be heard, not roaring, but constant, patient. It was a peace I had not known in years, and then my phone vibrated. Linda. The message said, "Where did you go? The kids miss you." I looked at the screen with my thumb suspended. There was no warmth in those words, no sign of regret, just acting. The kind you rehearse, not the kind you feel. I did not reply. I left the phone on the table and went back to my tea. The cup was warm in my hands. The steam curled gently in the golden light. In this house, silence was safety. In theirs, it had always been tension. By the third day, they got bolder. Michael. No, Ma. Why are you doing this? The question almost made me laugh. Doing what? Refusing to keep being used? I did not reply. That afternoon, while the wind moved the rosemary just outside the porch, Linda called. I did not answer, but I heard the voicemail. Her voice was tight, a forced calm covering nerves. All this is being really hard on the kids. They are asking where you are. Could you come over and talk again? Not a mention of me, of how I might be feeling, only how my absence caused them problems. They were not used to being ignored. They were used to my loyalty, quick answers, quick solutions, silent forgiveness. I had always responded to every need, to every little request for help, spoken or implied. I had taught them I had no limits that I would bend until I broke, but not anymore. On the 5th day, I was watering the potted plants that came with the villa, mostly succulents and a stubborn fern, when I heard the familiar sound of Michael's engine on the gravel. I stood still. He knocked twice, not loud but firm. "Ma, are you there?" I was in the kitchen, my heart still watching the light play on the tiles. I did not move. He knocked again, softer. "I just want to talk." I heard something in his voice. Tension, uncertainty. Not the tone of a man sure of his control, but that of someone who is no longer sure of the script. Still, I did not answer. Eventually, he left. The tires crunched on the gravel and the sound was lost in the wind. The next morning, a new message. "You could have talked to us before. You did not have to leave like that. You made everything harder." I read it twice, then 3 times. The words did not hurt. They irritated, as if I had thrown a tantrum. I have not recovered my dignity, as if walking away from constant disrespect was drama. I had paid rent. I had cooked. I had lowered my voice when Linda made her biting comments. I had scrubbed floors, watched kids, and made room for their needs. And now I was the problem. But there was no guilt anymore, only a deeper understanding of how little they had seen me. I did not leave to hurt them. I left to protect the little that was left of me. And now, without me, the machine they had built started to creak and crack. On the 7th day, a message from Sarah. "Hey, are you okay? Michael has been weird. Linda is stressed out. I do not know what happened, but I hope you are okay. I hope you are okay." Not a word about the rent, not a word about the chores, just confusion because without me, their routine did not work. I did not answer. I was still angry, still grieving for the years I had given to a house that only saw me as background. Day 10. Linda again. This time, her voice cracked on the voicemail. "Sorry. Really, I did not realize everything you did. We did not mean to make you feel like that, without taking responsibility. Just a vague apology like throwing a wet handkerchief at a flood. We did not charge you rent while Sarah lived for free. We never thanked you for cleaning our messes. We did not minimize your worth in front of our children. None of that. Just that an apology should carry the weight of the truth." Hers floated empty. Then came silence. Then came the shift. The guilt wore off and something sharper took its place. On day 12, Michael sent a longer message. "You just left. You did not even give us a chance to fix things. You did not have to blow everything up like that. Blow everything up? What I did was quiet. What they did day after day was loud. It was in the size of my voice when I spoke, in the way Linda rewrote every rule without telling me, in the dinners I was not invited to, in the way Michael called me she in front of the kids. They had torn it all down and expected me to keep holding up the beams. Now they called my absence a collapse. But I did not knock down the house. I simply walked out of it. At the end of that week, I was sitting on the porch with the sky painted in soft shades of lavender and peach, when a neighbor from the old neighborhood called, a woman I used to walk with when I lived with them. "Michael is in a bad mood," she told me carefully. "I saw him arguing with Linda in the driveway. The kids were crying. I think they are having a hard time without you." I thanked her and sat in silence while the wind moved the lemon tree by the porch. The citrus scent was intense and fresh. I did not smile. I did not feel victorious because I never wanted them to fail. I just did not want to be erased. And now, in my absence, the truth was coming to the surface. They had not valued me. They had valued what I did, the tasks, the money, the silence. Now that I was gone, they missed the structure, the comfort, the hands that always cleaned, and the voice that never complained. But they did not miss me. That was the wound I still carried. But I did not cry. I went into the house. The cool floor welcomed my bare feet. I lit a candle. The scent of vanilla filled the air. I opened a book. I let the silence occupy the space like music. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like the center of my own life. Not an assistant, not a tenant, not a maid, not a grandmother on duty. Just a woman in her own home. And I did not need anyone to validate it. I knew it, and that was enough. The first message I answered came from someone I did not expect. It was not Michael, nor Linda, nor even Sarah. It was Mrs. Alvarez, a neighbor from 2 streets over. She had seen me once at the supermarket with Michael, and then she sent me a simple message. "I always noticed how kind you were with the children. They clung to you like the sun. I hope you are well." I stared at the screen, blinking to hold back an emotion I had not felt in weeks. Not guilt, not pain, recognition. A woman I barely knew had seen what my own children had ignored. I replied, "Thank you. That means more than I can explain." Then I put the phone down and went outside. The air was warm that morning. The sunlight, somewhat hazy, filtered through the lemon tree leaves, drawing soft shadows on the porch. The breeze smelled of salt and rosemary. I had a laundry basket beside me, not because I had to, but because I wanted to hang it in the sun, something I had not done since I was a young wife in a small apartment without a dryer. And as I hung each garment, I felt present, firm, not invisible. A week passed before the pressure returned. It started with a series of photos from Linda the twins at the park holding signs. "We miss you, Grandma." They were sweet, painfully sweet. The kids were never the problem, but the timing was no accident. Then came the comments. Sarah posted a vague message on social media. "Some people abandon their family and call it peace. I call it selfishness." I did not reply, but I felt the blow. Not because she believed it, but because a part of me still wanted to be understood. After that, the messages were more direct. "Michael, the holidays are coming. Do not make this a stance." "Linda, the kids cry at night. They think you are mad at them. Please just call." And for a moment I almost did, but then I remembered. I remembered being barefoot in their kitchen with the checkbook in one hand and a wet rag in the other, while Michael said, "Well, it is only fair." I remembered Linda wiping the counter after I had cleaned it, Sarah rolling her eyes when I asked her to take off her shoes inside the house. I remembered it all, and I remembered how no one ever told me I was welcome. So I kept quiet. They did not stop. Linda left a gift on my porch, a framed photo of the kids and a note. "Come back. We will fix it." But they were not offering love. They were offering for me to return to my role, the unpaid caretaker, the soft-spoken helper, the one who fades into the background. I left the frame leaning against the lemon tree. 2 days later, Michael appeared. Without warning, just a knock on the door. I opened it. Not because I owed him, but because I wanted to see how he looked at me now. His face was thinner than I remembered, tired. He was not angry. He was unsure. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. We sat opposite each other in the living room. The window was open. In the distance, a seagull's cry was heard. The room smelled faintly of citrus and old wood. "I did not think you would actually leave," he said after a while. I nodded. "I know." He looked down. "I thought you just needed space. I did not think you wanted to be alone." "I am not alone," I said with a calm voice. "I am finally with someone who respects me." He looked at me, confused. "Who?" I smiled. "Myself." He did not speak for a long time. "I miss you," he said at last. "The kids miss you. I miss who I used to be." I answered slowly, "But not who you became, nor how you treated me." He opened his mouth and closed it. "I am sorry," he said. The words hung in the air. "I believe you," I answered. "But I am not coming back." He nodded slowly, and for the first time in years, he seemed to understand. When he left, I went back to sit on the porch. The sun was already low. Shades of orange and gold spilled over the water. Birds crossed the sky, their wings silent against the horizon. I had always feared this moment, choosing myself over the people I loved. While I breathed on my porch back there in Michael's house, the silence became heavy. It was no longer peace, it was disorder. Without my hands, everything started to creak, and for the first time they understood that what they missed was not my presence, it was my labor. Sometimes stories do not end when doors close, but when the heart learns to look differently. Every family, every love, every loss leaves a mark. And maybe that is what unites us most, learning to heal, to forgive, and to keep walking. Thank you for being here, for listening to my story. Have you ever lived something similar? And tell me. If you were in my place, what would you do? I would love to read your opinion in the comments. Because here at Grace's Heart Stories, we do not just tell stories. We share them to heal together. If this story touched your heart, subscribe so you do not miss the next ones and share this video. Maybe your words today will give hope to someone who needs it.